So as usual, we start with questions and answers. And now we are coming almost to the final part of the treatise. There isn't much theory to be explained. So today we will devote time to the rest of the treatise. It remains not much. And next week, next Saturday, today is what day?
Saturday Fason.
Today is the 14th of June.
So 21st of June, we will do the last lesson, because from beginning of July we have a retreat here. Then I'm flying to Nepal and India. So we will finish this treatise next week. And when I come back in November, then we can start discussing some other treatise. I have proposed this treatise, the Master Shenyan, who is also connected with many of you, has written a book about the Tasheng Jilquan Lun by Huisu, Nanye Huisu, Tashi, one of the founding spirits of the Tiantai, which is, as we should know, the base for Shan and also for Huayan. So we can, then I will translate this treatise into English and Czech also, and maybe discuss it. And also there is this very good book by Master Shenyan, very scholarly. I avoid to go into too much scholarly details, but it is very practical. Just like this book can be, this Dachen Shishin Lung, then we can write long books about the different possibilities of interpretations. And indeed, they are, the interpretations can be counted in hundreds, if not thousands, in our days. So maybe next week I will just give some small introduction into the commentaries and this Darshan Jikwan Lun, the practice of the Samatha Vipassana in Mahayana is a kind of also kind of a commentary, not real commentary. Just like this treatise, Darshan Shishin Lun, is considered by some to be kind of a commentary to Lankavatara Sutra. Not a real commentary, but in spirit is kind of a notes to make us understand better the philosophy of Lankavatara Sutra. So this Hoysa's book is also kind of intellectual and yogic digestion of what we have learned. So if you're interested, then I will start working on the English translation, so that getting old, I keep my memory fresh, by engaging myself in more study and more reflections on what I study. This keeps me kind of young. Memory is very important in the process of aging. Keeping memory busy, we kind of avoid the experimental aspects of the process of aging, which I can feel on my body, but maybe a little less on my mind because of engaging in this study and contemplation. So let us go to question and answers. We have covered the part explaining Samatha and Vipassana, or explaining the practice of the paramis. We should know that the Samatha and Vipassana is the king of all the paramis. Actually, the Bhagya Paramita, the perfection of wisdom, is the base for all Mahayana practices. We cannot speak of Mahayana without the perfection of wisdom, and the Samadhi and perfection of wisdom is in most of the Mahayana traditions, sometimes more, sometimes less, emphasized as actually being inseparable. So with Shamatha and Vipassana, we can complete all the other paramis. Without Shamatha and Vipassana, we cannot practice paramis in the Mahayana way. We can practice paramis in the disciple way. Disciples also need paramis in order to deepen their realization. The depth of realization depends even in Theravada on the depth of the practice of perfections. The same idea you will find in Jatakas, in the commentaries. It is not particularly Mahayanic, but the Mahayana is based on the perfection of wisdom. And the perfection of wisdom is actually Mahayana. Mahayana is the perfection of wisdom. So, in order to practice perfection of wisdom, we, however, need samadhi. And as we have seen in our scriptures, the samadhi is not explained as usually in the Abhidharma as a practice of the dhyanas or absorption into the sphere of subtle forms and or in the form absorptions in the formless spheres, but it is explained as usually even today as the 9 abodes of mind, Shinju, Chittastiti, in the way of attaining samadhi. When one has samadhi, one can practice to perfection whatever one practices. If one has no samadhi, then the practice will always be deficient. So the mastery of samadhi is linked to, even in the other Buddhist tradition, is linked to the mastery of the wisdom. But the mastery of the wisdom does not necessarily need, in the Mahayana tradition, the practice of the 8 samapatis, 8 attainments. But they, in some presentations of Mahayana, like the Kieshen meeting, the Sandinirmochana Sutra, they still play a very important role. They are inseparable from the practice of concentration. And without concentration, this is coded in all Buddhist traditions, we cannot see things as they are. So one needs a thing to see things as they are. Samahitam chitam yatam bhutam pasati. This comes in Theravada also. Only the mind in samadhi can see things as they really are. Yatha bhutam. Sure. So now let us go to questions, if there are any, and we shall devote the whole next lesson, the last lesson. Yes.
I have a question. Last week, if I'm not misperceive you, you mentioned about contemplating the impermanence, and then when till the states of no impermanence that you mentioned as cessation. So my question, first, perhaps, is it correct, my understanding? And then my second question is, when you mention about cessation, does it refer to the third noble truth, Nirodha, or the meditative attainment like Nirodha Samapatti? So that's my question, Pastor. Thank you.
Okay. So that is a little bit of misunderstanding. I have explained that the practice of Vipassana deepens only to the extent of realization when one is not anymore aware of arising, but only of cessation. Then comes the breakthrough that one can see the object of liberation. In the practice of the disciples, it is nirvana as opposed to samsara. One attains this ability to not to be concerned with arising by practicing this nirvana yenli of disenchantment with the arising and cessation. Arising and cessation, as we have seen in this scripture, is the samsaric mind. In Chinese, literally, samsara is translated as Shen Mian, the arising and cessation. So when we have seen in our scripture, when the mind has activated ignorance, avidya, then the alaya, which is combination in our scripture of the mind which is arising and passing, and the mind which is not arising and passing, the mind as suchness, the mind as nirvana, they come together as alaya. And alaya is, there are different interpretations, but normally alaya is the base for both, for nirvana and also for samsara. This is the idea of the most of the interpreters of this scripture. The alaya as the nirvanic aspect, and alaya has also the samsaric aspect. Now, how do they come together? This is a wonder of the scripture, but it has many, many interpretations according to the tradition. The normally samsara and nirvana, they cannot be connected. When the object is nirvana, then the samsara disappears. When the object is samsara, then the nirvana disappears. But here we have seen, we have the situation where the essence, for most of the interpreters, the essence remains always the same. That is suchness, that is nirvana, but the functions without the essence, there are no functions. So the essence and functions, they have to be somehow connected. So we have learned the one mind has the great essence, great characteristics, and great function, because in some way there is the interchange between this the aspect of nirvana and aspect of samsara in this one mind. But this one mind, his essence, this is the philosophy of Tathagata Garbha. His essence is always nirvana. It's always suchness. So this suchness is represented in us, in ignorant beings, as the Buddha nature, or as the metrics of Tathagata. It's because we have all metrics of Tathagata, so we have all, so to say, the potential of becoming Buddhas. If there was not this suchness as the base in our mind, so as the Mahayana Sutras say, as the Nirvana Sutra, Mahayana Nirvana Sutra says, then we would never be able to realize the potential of enlightenment. So the practice that this treatise is leading us to is the combination of the straight mind, which is the mind contemplating the suchness, and the deep mind, that is the compassionate mind, contemplating not only the impermanence, the suffering of impermanence, and the selflessness of that which is impermanent and stressful, and the impurity of the state that comes in our scripture also as the base for Vipassana. But then it turns not to nirvana, it turns to the vow to liberate all beings, to bodhicitta. This is a practice of Mahayana, bodhicitta. The bodhicitta means that we dwell in emptiness, but we do not leave the samskaras, the mental formations or will formations. So in this way, only according to this scripture, we can fully realize our potential of the Buddhahood. That means our practice of the paramis, which reveals the potential of Buddhahood, not only in ourselves, but in all beings. And by practicing the more and more deep understanding of these potentials, and one can not only benefit oneself, but one can learn to benefit others continuously. But the condition is that one practices the shamatha and vipassana continually, as our scripture explains in 4 bodily postures. The shamatha does not abandon vipassana, vipassana does not abandon shamatha. And the vipassana, since it emphasizes not abandoning the arising and cessation, this vipassana allows us to penetrate the conventional truths. Shasuti. The vipassana is connected with the knowledge of cause and effect. And the knowledge of cause and effect is the worldly truth, mundane truth. And through understanding the mundane truth, one can understand also that which is beyond the world. This is Buddhism in general. So, because we practice emptiness, we eventually understand that even though, as the text explained, the resultant karma never disappears, but nevertheless, from the point of view of the suchness, this resultant karma, this cause and effect, is actually illusionary. Yeah. So through penetrating the kya, the illusionary, we get into the understanding that this illusionary, in fact, is never separated from that which is real. So the emptiness never leaves the mental formations, which are nothing else but the cause and effect. So the dependent origination is normally explained on the principle of karma. Even the Madhyamikas, they accept this understanding. But here we are in the Yogacara. So the base of everything is the mind, and everything happens in the mind. Without the mind, nothing happens. And the samsara happens in the mind, and nirvana happens in the mind. And this understanding is difficult for a beginner. Now, today we come to this part. But we eventually, by continuous practice, we understand that the alaya and the suchness, they actually, as Lankavatara Sutra explains, they cannot be separated. So the suchness and the samsara is neither same nor different. Just like the principle and its functions are neither same nor different. This most of the commentators explained like that. But this principle never changes, but the functions always changing according to the causality. According to the causality is the continuity of the mind. The continuity of the mind in the Yogacara is the causality. And the continuity of that mind is neither same as suchness when we would be all the Buddhas, but it is also not different from suchness. So at first we understand that this, because we separate shamatha and vipassana, we understand that this samsara is separate. But when we get a deeper knowledge of shamatha and vipassana, then they are not anymore separate. The true and the illusionary exist together. So from the normal knowledge we study, as the commentary say, from emptiness we understand the illusionary. But here, when we have genuine realization, so from the illusionary we understand the emptiness, which the illusionary never leads the emptiness, and that is the true practice. That is a Yixing Sanmei, the samadhi of one moment, also Yinyan Sanmei, samadhi of one formation. In this one formation, when we do not identify with any concepts, we have learned that when there is thinking, we create the concepts and hold to the concepts. We don't hold to the reality. We hold to what appears as a reality based on the concepts. We have learned this. But this continuity as such, it's the bhavanga or alaya, it does not need any concepts. These concepts, they come through the differentiation based on our feelings or our sensations, and this differentiation based on our sensation brings into the play the role of the thinking. But the samadhi of one samskara is not to allow thinking to continue, so that the concepts don't manifest clearly, so that we are not eaten by the concepts, not devoured by the concept, but so to say, the concentration and wisdom, they devour the concepts. This is what the Surangama Sutra teaches. The meditator should be master of the objects, not be mastered by the object. Be mastered by the object does not mean that we don't see the objects, but we are not guided by the concepts we impose on our realities that we see. And due to this concept, then we divide. When we divide, as we have learned before, we are victims of the desire and of the use. as long as we are guided by thinking, and when there is thinking connected with concept, we are guided, as the author has clearly explained, we are guided by our concepts, which are base for our views, and by desire. These desires, they appear based on this differentiation and continuity in differentiation, which form the self, as we have learned. The continuity, self is continuity, and everybody has a different continuity because we have all different seats in our mind. This is how we function. So the same object to some becomes the object of disliking, the same object becomes to other as the object of liking. We are too familiar with this principle in our lives also. And this liking and disliking, they always change. So what is the way to deal with all this? Connect shamatha and vipassana. As the author has explained, through shamatha, when practiced correctly, the common man will not be victim of his clingings to his likings and dislikings, and the practitioners of the disciples will lose fear of samsara because this it is based on differentiation. And in shamatha, we have learned there is no object to hold. So there is no place for concept to hold the mind. When there is no differentiation, so there is no space for object to control the mind, to grasp the mind. So when there is the vipassana, so the vipassana we have learned leads not to turn away from samsara, but to great compassion. So for the disciples, the vipassana would lead to great compassion, because this impermanence does not belong only to us, it belongs to everything that has continuity. And continuity in this tradition comes from mind, and mind is one, we have learned. This is the philosophy of this treatise. And as far as the aim of vipassana remains the same, to get rid of the kleshas. So on one hand, we give rise to great compassion, and on the other hand, we get rid of kleshas. But to get rid of kleshas does not mean to abandon kleshas, we have learned that, but it means to learn from the defiled state of mind. How do we learn? Because we understand this practice of Yixing Sanmei, Yinyan Sanmei. We don't let, they are connected with concepts, and we don't let these concepts to rule over our mind. So for that, we need to practice continually. And this continual practice is very difficult. So we come to this last passage in this chapter, which explains the skillful means of Nien Pho, the Buddha Anusmriti, because the practice which our treatise leads us to is a continuous practice. Continuous practice is very difficult. We are all at one stage or another. We are seized by our tendencies, anushayas. Anushaya is very wonderful words. They are following the mind, and due to the seeds of being adjacent to the mind, then we have always with us following the tendency either to liking, to grasping, which is connected with pride, which is connected with wrong views. Wrong views and pride, they are grasping. Or to dislike, which is connected with depression, with worries, with the fancies. So this is how our mind works. So in order to avoid this very difficult practice, which can only succeed when we practice continually. So the author, let us translate, Hu Zi Zhong Shen Chu Xie Shi Fa Yi Qiu Zhen Xin Qi Xin. Then besides, there are beings who are beginners like us. We are all kind of beginners in the continuity of practice. Our practice gets interrupted and we get lost in our concepts, what we like, what we don't like, what we want, what we don't want. So, in a way, we are all beginners. But it's in the Zen, being a beginner is when one understands that the beginner is learning from all situations. Being beginner is the base for all profound practices. Because we really advance in Dharma when we learn from all situations and do not categorically reject any situation. This was my first lesson when I came to Japan. I have been studying Theravada, at least theoretically more than meditating, but still I did some Theravada meditation, Samatha Vipassana. Then I came to Japan, and the first thing was I was led to dancing because the workers below the mountain in the village, they celebrated something, and so let's go because they emphasize good relation with the surrounding, with the lay community. So we went dancing. So I became very, very worried. How dancing, how can I decided to become a monk to devote my time to practice? How can I go dancing? So I was completely perturbed, and the others they had no problem. Why? Because they have different concepts. What is practice and what is not practice? So this treatise is very wonderful for this purpose of detach from our concepts, from our viewing things, how they should be, how they should not be, but learn from different situations how to strengthen our faith in suchness in us. This is the true belief or to trust in the one's Buddha nature and in the Buddha nature in the beings. The Buddha nature is there. Only we have to have the courage to practice according to this insight, which is here called the Penjue, the original enlightenment. In the beginning, everything was perfect. This is Zen koan also. In the beginning, everything is perfect. But when the continuity gets hold of the mind, then this perfection suddenly disappears. Exactly at that moment when it appears. This is Yin Samme. So this clarity cannot be lost, should not be lost, and we should always stay with it. This is the practice the author of this treatise, whoever it may be, leads us to. And so when we connect it with suchness, with one mind, then we have no fear. Because this practice is very difficult, so we still have fear. What fear? We are living in the world, especially nowadays, at the time of the author, people still live deeply connected to their faith. Nowadays, most of us don't believe anything. It's not only unfortunately, in the Western hemisphere, indulging in the pleasures of the senses, but it is also spreading everywhere. It is now the so-called modern culture. So, in this Saha world, it is said we are, Buddhist scriptures say we are privileged to have this human body because we and the gods, not the lower destinies, we can realize suchness. We can realize nirvana. But once we lose this privilege of having this possibility of insight into nirvana, then we don't know when we get again this chance. It is compared to the blind turtle appearing once in 100 years at the surface of the ocean, on which is floating a ring. So the possibilities that it stretches its this blind turtle stretches its neck through this the ring is as small as when we miss this chance, we get again the chance of becoming really enlightened. And so we have seen that Buddha, it means in here is Buddha is a Dharmakaya. Dharmakaya is a Buddha. The Buddha has the form body, this Nirvana Kaya, but his true body is the Dharmakaya. And that which leads to this true body, that is the enjoyment body, which is a subtle cause and effect. So in order to practice correctly, we need to sublimate our mind so that we remain, so to say, in the presence of the Buddha. But because our mind is weak, as the text explains, so the practitioner is afraid. He cannot always encounter Kuneng Changzhi Zhu Fo, cannot always encounter all the Buddhas and approach them and to Kungyang, to give offerings to them. So, like this, in this Saha world where beings are concerned with all kinds of non-important things, the realization of the faith, this treatise is concerned with the realization of the faith. When we realize the faith, we are, so to say, never anivarta, utwei. We cannot fall away from the right path. And in this tradition, we have learned the Tao, Tao Ji Shi Body, Body Ji Shi Tao. The Tao, the way means the body, and body means the way, and body means connection to this Panjie, to this insight into our Buddha nature, insight into the true nature of the world, which is suchness. So when we have break in our bodhisattva practice, which is the practice of the heroes, Mahavira practice. Bodhisattva is always pictured in scriptures as a Mahavira, the great hero. When our heroic practice is affected by other things, and it will be affected by other things, unfortunately. So then it will be very easy to turn back, to turn our back to our practice, and either to become again one who, if one is monk, he goes away from monkhood, or if one is the monk and remains a monk, then he will only care for his own liberation and give up the idea of liberating all beings, which here is connected with the practice of the one mind. So one should know that the Tathagata, the Buddha, has the superior skillful means, by means of which one can protect the mind of the face. And it consists of the gathering the mind or concentrating the mind in the Nianfo practice, in the practice of Buddha anusmriti, in the practice of recollecting the Buddha. Now, there is a big difference in the recollecting the Buddha in the Theravada tradition. Record Nien Pho in Theravada tradition means recollecting the 11 virtues of the Buddha, itipiso bhagava arahant samma sambuddho vidyacharana sampanno, and so everybody knows. One recollect the virtues of the Buddha, but here it does not mean just recollecting the virtues of the Buddha and their characteristics. It means precisely recollecting the Dharmakaya of the Buddha, recollecting the suchness, which is the synonym for the Dharmakaya of Buddha. So this practice is very different. So one should concentrate by on the causes and conditions of concentrating the mind in the process of recollection, the Dharmakaya of the Buddha. So the Buddha Amitabha, the most popular among the Buddhas of the Pure Land, Sukhavati, the western land of the extreme happiness, is the most popular practice among the recollection of the Buddhas. There is also the Eastern medicine Buddha and so on, also has its mantras, also has its visualizations. But Amitabha is the most predominant, so it penetrated even into tantric tradition. It penetrated into Hawaiian. I remember Sudhana, the hero of Hawaiian, the end when he is open to true realization. The Samantha Pushya Bosa teaches him to recollect Amitabha. So, and the same even in when you study Dzogchen and so on. So you do the Hoa practice, the transference of mind into the pure land of Amitabha and so on. These are the common practices. So the Buddha Anusmriti means recollection of the Buddha, but here the recollection does not mean a recollection of something which we can differentiate, but precisely a recollection of something we cannot differentiate. This is a kind of a paradox. This differentiation is only for the purpose of non-differentiation. So it is not really differentiation. So it is explained in the Amitabha Sutra, in the Sutra of the limitless life, that one who recollects the Amitabha Buddha, because Amitabha Buddha is 48, if I remember well, 48 vows, yuan. And one of the yuan is that whoever prays to him one-pointedly, he will surely, at the last moment of his life, he will be reborn. in his land due to the power of his vows and of his practice based on vows. So each important bodhisattva Buddha have the vows like Samantha Pushian has 10 vows which we in Chinese tradition always repeat, and so on. And they kind of complement the 4 elementary vows which every bodhisattva, every Buddha, every Mahayana practitioner takes on himself, which is to liberate all beings, to get rid of all kleshas, not only oneself, but of all beings, to learn all the dharmas for the purpose and attain the highest enlightenment, meaning non-dual enlightenment. Tangtian he for when one is born in this pure land, one will be able never to be separated from the direct vision of the Buddha. So, and as one will not be separated from the Buddha, one needs not to be worried of being reborn in the inferior state of existence. So, as this sutra says, when one pointedly recollects the Sukhavati Yuha, the Sukhavati Pure Land, Western Pure Land of extreme happiness, the Amitabha, and if one dedicates all the Kushala Mulas or the Shamken or the good roots of merit for all beings and for being born in that pure land, he will surely immediately be born right there in that very moment and will be able to never be separated from the direct vision of the Buddha. And so that he does not need to worry about the abandoning the true path. So he will actually be able to see this Amitabha Dharmakaya. So he will be always active in with dwelling in the true samadhi. The true samadhi, as we have seen, is the samadhi with no form in particular. That is the samadhi of suchness. And the way to get into the samadhi of suchness is to understand that all the risings of the mind connected with the concepts linked to holding to differentiations is actually the illusionary. So through illusionary, which is the worldly truth. In Sanskrit, we can interpret even linguistically worldly truth as samvati, samvrinoti. It covers that which is true, covers the suchness. The worldly covers the suchness. So by understanding that the rising and passing away is not true, then one will eventually abide in the samadhi of suchness, which then has no interruption and no object can disturb the samadhi. It will be only disturbed when one holds to that object. When one does not hold, no disturbance. So what remains is the last chapter, which is very simple, and we will also do some discussion. I don't want just to be the only one speaking. I'm looking forward to talk with others also and discuss how to improve our practice by improving our understanding, how to stay in the present moment without holding to our differentiations. This is the practice of the Shinrun, which then brings us to the realization of the faith. Now I have practiced no one ever that I have met among the masters of Mahayana will say that he has realized the samadhi of suchness, but they will say that I have realized the faith, and saying that one has realized the faith means that one is always connected with the correct practice. And the correct practice here is recollecting the suchness as being the very base for all that appears. Okay, so let us finish here. 愿你自恐的不提解，我等一众生皆恐成佛道。May the merits of this Dhamma spread to all beings so that we attain the state of perfect realization. Om. Okay, so have a nice weekend and see you next week.